So in this video, we are going to be discussing custom states functionality in Bubble.io. And I know for many people, this is a very confusing topic. It certainly was a little bit confusing for me when I started out. And so in this video, I want to show you a live example of how I'm using custom states on my own app to achieve certain functionality. And that way you will understand how to do the same. And so before we go further, let me explain to you exactly what custom states are. And so this is from Bubble's own documentation. Custom states are very useful when you want to store some information on the page and not store it permanently in the database. Two main cases usually require such functionality: store the current view on the page, store temporary values in workflows. Okay, and so you can define it here, and I'm going to show you in the example. And any element can have a custom state attached to it. You have two ways to define a custom state. You can do it in this way, or you can do it from the inspector, from the element state. Okay, so let me show you without reading this documentation. Let me show you exactly how I have it done and the thinking behind it. And so here I have a sample calculator that I built. And this calculator actually works fairly well. It's using Bubble's own formula for a financial calculator when it comes to calculating how much is going to be the monthly payment of a house or anything you're looking to buy, depending on the credit rating, depending on the APR and all of this. So this is how the calculator works right now. You can pick a credit rating. So let's say you have 400 to 500 FICO score in the US, or maybe you have this FICO score, and then you're going to have an APR. I'm pulling these values from Google Sheets, and I talked about it in the previous video. But what's important here is that we have this calculator, and they can put down payment, whatever they want. And when they click on next step, what we're doing is we're displaying the next step. And that is done using a custom state, because this group right here, this area right here is set to invisible when the page is loaded, but afterwards it's set to visible, and we are controlling that feature, that state, using a custom state. So let me show you how I have it set up. And so a really good example in order to understand custom states on a really intuitive level would be an apartment, and you have a main room, and you have maybe two people in the apartment, and one person is in one room, another person is in the second room, and then you have a big living room. And so each of the people are doing something in the room. But in the living room, you can have the lights could be on or the lights could be off. And so if the lights are off, both people see that the lights are off. If the lights are on, both people see that the lights are on. And depending on the state of the light in the other room, in this example, they can do something. They see a value. In other words, there's a value that's accessible to everybody. And if you have any experience with development, software development, one way I like to think about custom states is like one big global variable. And so this variable can be attached to any element. And so we can click on an element and we can attach that variable. So how do I do that? So let's say I want to attach a variable here. I double click on it. I click this I button, and I can add a new custom state, because this variable does not have a custom state. I can click on my button, or let's say I want to click on this input, and I can click on this I button, and I can add a new custom state. I would enter my state name, state type, and later on I can manipulate that custom state, and I can read it and see what the value is, and then proceed accordingly. Now let me show you how I have it set up here. The way I have it set up here is I have an index, and me personally, I like to create my custom states on a page level. Okay, because that's kind of what they are. They are global variables, and a page is kind of a global element. It's a global entity. And so if we click on this, you see it has that index there, and you can also choose index here, or you can click anywhere out of these elements, because if you click here, you have this field here. If you click away, you're going to see index. So if you double click here, you're going to have your inspector. And if you click on this I, you're going to have a custom state. And I have a custom state. It's called next step. And it's a yes/no custom state, okay? And you can set a default value. In our example, this could be no. We can have because the person has not clicked on the next step. So next step is no, okay? And the way I have it used, and so the way I'm using this functionality is very, very simple. I created a group here, and if I double click on this group, I want this group to only appear. See, it's not visible on page load. This element is visible on page load. This is not checked because I do not want people to see this when the page is loaded because they haven't taken the next step. But what I did is I went to conditional and I created a condition. I turned it on. I said when index's next step is yes, this element is visible. So what I'm doing is kind of a reactive way. I'm not setting it. I'm not doing anything. All I'm saying is I want this to show up when this is set to yes. Now, who is setting it to yes and how is that set? And this is the second part of the equation, is that this is working exactly how I want it to work. I do not want this to show up. I want it to show up only if a certain condition is met. And I don't really care right now at this stage of the game how that condition is being set. The only thing I care about is that this is not going to be showed up unless a condition is set. And that's how Bubble works, is that each element has a conditional tab here and you can set these conditions. And custom states are perfect for this. And I'm saying when index's next step is yes, this is going to show up. But by default, it's no. And how is this set to yes? By using a workflow. So we have this next step. If we double click on it, we have the start edit workflow and we have the first step. And if we go to the first step, you can set a state. So if I delete it and I do it together with you, we're going to go to element actions and we're going to set this set state. And then we're going to pick an element, our index element. We're going to pick the state and we are going to set it to yes. Now that we set it to yes, all of the elements are going to react. It's kind of a reactive workflow. It's a reactive flow, which I really like because I am not setting that element. Of course, I can do it in the workflow as well, meaning I can set the state or not set the state, but I can say, okay, once you click on this, show this element. But what if I want many other elements to be visible? I don't want to create lots of different steps. I want those elements to react. And that is why custom states work really well in this instance. Okay. And so in this workflow, we have set states next step to yes. And so let me show you the app. If we go and reload this app, you're going to see that it's working exactly as it's intended. And so we have this calculator. I can put in a down payment for a house, and my down payment is going to be $350. This is my monthly payment. Once I click on next step, that custom state is set to yes, because that's exactly, it's logical. I click next step, it's set to yes. And then everything else reacts. So in this example, you can apply for great rates from our lenders. You can do all these things. And so in my opinion, that is the best way you want to do it. And so the way you want to think about custom states is that I would recommend setting them up on the page level. Okay, they're going to be set, in my opinion, is the easiest ways to go about it, because that way that custom state is going to be easily available for all the elements on that specific page, since they're set on the page level. And so you want to set, you do not, so it really depends how you want to design your app. In my example, the way I'm designing this app is that I didn't start from this next step. I don't really care about the next step yet. All I care about, my number one goal, my number one priority, was to have this show up after a certain action. And in this example is going to be a workflow. In another example, it could be something else. Maybe I clicked on an element. Maybe I did this. Maybe I got a REST API call or something like this. I started by building this hidden group, and I wanted this group to be visible only after the next step was taken, only after the visitor completed this form and they were ready to go to the next step. So this made sense because right away I click on this and I go to the conditional. It's a conditional thing. It's not displayed all the time. It's only displayed under certain conditions. It's like you want to go to the gym. Well, the condition for you to go to the gym, if the weather is above 10 degrees Celsius or above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's below 10 degrees, you're going to stay home. Or if it's snowing outside, you're going to stay home. We have conditions in our lives, in our actions. Everything that we do, it has certain implicit conditions. And so it made sense automatically for me to create these conditions. I turned it to on. And right away, I can set this. So if we start this from the beginning, I clear it, I set it to when. I have so many interesting things. I can read these elements state. I can see if this is set, if that is set. But I want a custom state. So I scroll down, I scroll to index, and so I picked index, and then I picked the custom state. Next step is yes. Only when they clicked on the next step, the condition is met, and this is showing up. And then I create a workflow, okay? This is logical. Next step is set, and now we can continue doing something. If I had 3 other elements, if I wanted to execute some kind of event, I can do it in the workflow, but I can also create a condition so that that condition is met once that custom state is met, okay? And so it's actually very, very useful in my experience. I highly recommend you playing with it, but you kind of have to know when you want to use it, because in many cases, you can just use workflows in this example. All right, guys, so this is all I wanted to share with you in this video. Really, really hope you've gotten value here. Let me know if you have any questions below, and I will see you in the next video.